Welcome to Conversations with Anne Elizabeth, the podcast inspired by my book, I'm Registered Dietitian, Now What? And where I have the absolute joy to sit back, relax, and have a conversation about nutrition with a variety of people who share their personal story of passion and purpose, especially registered dietitians. My lovely conversation today is with Sherry Adams, my first nutrition manager and one of the smartest nutrition support dietitians I know. Another blog post this week I'm working on for Wisdom Wednesday, so make sure to go check it out at AnnElizabethRD.com. And you can also connect with me on Twitter and Instagram at AnnElizabethRD. Today's conversation was with Sherry Adams. She's not only a registered dietitian, but she's a nutrition support expert. Sherry was my clinical preceptor during my internship, and she taught me everything I know about tube feedings and TPNs. She also believed in me so much as an intern, she offered me my first registered dietitian job. She has such a special place in my heart, and I knew Sherry's journey was interesting, but it was also wonderful to sit down with her and listen to her story again. Please enjoy. I'm so excited to spend the day with you today, just talking a little bit more about your path as a registered dietitian. We worked together and I've known you for a long time, but I kind of want to know where you got started. Like, what was it about nutrition that got you interested in being a dietitian?
Well, actually, I was majoring in home economics at first.
You were?
Yes. And I ended up taking a lot of nutrition and health classes. Mm-hmm. And I just really liked it. And I liked the preventative part of nutrition.
Okay.
You know, helping people not get sick versus taking care of them after they're sick, which is totally what I'm doing now. But yeah, that's how I got started. So I got my bachelor's in, it was actually human development and family.
So when you were in college, you started out doing home ec, and then as part of that major, you had to take nutrition classes.
Right, exactly.
And so when you were, do you mind me asking, like, what you thought when you started doing that new home ec kind of?
It was actually in the home ec college, but it was human development and family.
Okay.
So it
was just under that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you always wanted to kind of do like the human development type aspect.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I got that, I figured I might as well, finish that degree. So I did. And then I went and I worked for a year actually at a weight loss center with a dietitian.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Nebraska at the time, the university had a master's program where you could do your internship, do your master's. I had to go back and take some prerequisites, but then I got my RD that way.
Okay.
After I got my master's.
Oh, okay. So you worked in the weight loss clinic. Mm-hmm. What kind of weight loss clinic was it like?
It was just a commercial one. It was bad.
It was bad. But they had a dietitian.
They had a dietitian.
That's interesting.
It was I'm kind of old.
You're not.
It was a long time ago, and it was in Denver. I was living in Denver.
You were in Denver at the time.
Yeah. And actually, I went to Iowa City before that. I skipped a step, and I worked as a diet tech at the hospital at University of Iowa. So I did that. I had a boy up there, so I went up there and did that.
Was this after college then, too?
After college, yeah.
And you went to college here in Nebraska?
In Lincoln, yeah.
In Lincoln.
Both degrees in Lincoln.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I forgot that step. I went out there and I did diet tech, and I actually worked at Bergen as a diet tech for a little while.
You did?
When I was doing my prerequisites.
Okay. How long were you in Iowa City doing it as a diet tech?
About a year.
About a year.
And then about a year in Denver. I wanted to move to Colorado, so I went out there and I did that, and then ended up coming back to Lincoln for the master's.
And that's when you got your master's in nutrition.
That's when I got my master's. And then my first job was at Pegler-Cisco.
Okay.
So that was working with Computrition system.
And maybe you can explain a little bit. So Pegler-Cisco is
It's a food and medical supply distributor.
Okay. Is that here in the Midwest, or is it national?
It's national now. Okay. Cisco's national. Pegler was the local one. And they started out as just, a family-owned company, and then were bought. But there's Cisco, like everywhere. So they supply to hospitals, colleges. They got into some medical supplies, so they're pretty big. So I did that. But I was their first dietitian, and mainly what I did was I just wrote menus for nursing homes that were our customers.
Oh, okay.
And then we computerized them, and we provided them with 6 different reports that they could use, like a recipe book, cost analysis. I don't even remember, so long ago.
And that was the CompuServe program.
It was like an added value service. So I really wasn't doing like direct sales. It was more as an added value service for the company. So I did that about 3 years.
When you it's interesting to me because like the company decided they needed a dietitian for this part of their added value service, obviously is why they hired you. And I mean, were you familiar with that aspect of being a dietitian, or was it something that just caught interest to you?
I had a friend from college that worked there. He was a salesperson, and I was working on my prerequisites, and so they said, do you want to come in and, like do data entry for the computrition system? And the person that was running it was not a dietitian, and they knew I was studying to be one. So that's kind of how I fell into it, is he told me about it. And no, I wasn't really aware of any of that. Idea. Yeah. So then when she left, I graduated with my master's and got my RD. So then they hired me as the first dietitian.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, so I was there 3 years, and then I got married and I moved. And did you ever have Dr. Stats in college?
No, I did not.
She was an instructor, and they actually hired her. She had a PhD, and she just said teaching didn't pay well. So
she wanted to find. So she was more motivated. That's interesting from a teaching perspective to go to.
It was real. She was a college professor, and she went and did that, and she loved it. And I don't know how long she was there, but then after that, they didn't have a dietitian for a while.
Huh.
And I'm not really sure why that was.
They just maybe couldn't find one that was interested.
I'm not sure. I think maybe it was cost cutting or something. I don't know.
Could be.
But then they did rehire one, and I've met her, and she does talks and seminars through Cisco at
so
their
they
food
still
show.
have a dietitian. Do they just still
They
just
have one now. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. At their location.
At their location.
I don't know.
They might
if
have
the
them at if they're throughout the country. There
and
might
I'm
be
sure
other
there's a
dietitians.
corporate dietitian, and so that's a different area than I would have known about.
Well, and you were kind of, that sounds like early in the game with them before they were even just Cisco. So
yeah, at the Lincoln location. I'm not sure. I really don't remember if other branches had
a dietitian
because they had just become Cisco when I got there. So other branches may have already had them, but I was the first one there. So
that's really exciting.
It was a really fun job. I drove all over Nebraska and
Kansas, meet with people and
didn't have kids and stayed in hotels and thought that was cool.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of great as a young dietitian to kind of be able to experience.
Yeah.
Did you like the aspect of working with nursing homes and working with skilled facilities?
In that
aspect.
I didn't even know enough about anything.
You didn't.
To
you were just like, I don't know, I'm just doing the job.
So, and they were always so appreciative, because, they only had a consulting dietitian maybe once a month, and we were handing these directors of food service their recipes and the nutrient analysis, and so that was fun because they were very appreciative.
Because that would have been a whole other step that they wouldn't have taken time away from their
job.
So that's important. That's an important aspect of being a dietitian.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you were using your dietitian skills and things that you learned? And
I did. I felt like I wasn't. I felt like I wanted something more medical, though.
Okay.
So I was kind of more
drawn into that medical aspect.
I wanted to do something more medical.
Did something, was there like an aha moment since you kind of, you did the diet clerk thing, so you kind of had a little bit of that medical touch. Did that kind of spark your medical interest?
So. Yeah. And I had a half crazy notion of going to med school at one point, but that didn't last very long. So I just wanted to get into something clinical.
Okay. So let's talk about your clinical path, because that's kind of where you've spent most of your time as a registered dietitian.
Yeah, and that was a long time ago. So then I got married, and we moved to California for a year.
Okay.
He was doing not a residency, but kind of a, work-study thing.
Program.
So I got a job at the pharmacy out there, which is kind of funny because now I ended up at a pharmacy, now at this stage, but
full circle.
I was just the enteral coordinator. So again, I would go around to nursing homes and help them with their enterals and calculate things and give talks and things like that.
So most of those nursing homes didn't have dietitians then at the time that were writing.
They did.
They did.
So again, it was just kind of an added value service
from the pharmacy aspect.
I had to deal with the billing, like the certifications. For qualification.
Now that's like a whole other animal.
Yeah.
Did you know anything about that?
No, I didn't.
So you learned a lot of that on the job from the pharmacy billing aspect, and like you said, certifications.
And then here, 20 years later, whatever it's been, now I'm doing that again. So
okay, so you were out there for a year, and you did that for a year. And did you feel like that again was medical enough for you? Was that, or did you like the idea of being in a hospital setting more?
I liked it. I would have liked to stay out there, but the cost of living was high, and the pollution. And
where was it at in California?
Kids, it was I was in Irvine, but I drove all over the city.
Did you?
It was
so
really,
you traveled everywhere.
Yeah, it was.
So you worked with a lot of different, just demographics of people too.
Oh yeah,
and saw a lot of different types of
every different part of. Well, I just called on nursing homes. I didn't go in homes.
Just nursing homes.
Yeah, I didn't go in homes. But, pretty much every part of the LA area.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
It was cool.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and the interstate was like 10 lanes across and the traffic, and it was just interesting.
Different.
Yeah. So then I came back. We moved back, and I got a job with the Seaboard Group. So that's a competitor of CompNutrition.
So maybe explain, is CompNutrition still around? Okay.
Yeah, they use it at CHI.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe explain those two things just, for my purposes too, because I'm not very familiar with those computer systems, nutrition analysis systems. Is that what you'd classify them as? Yeah.
But you get into like purchasing, and Kristen would know all about this because she pretty much, that's what she was doing at CHI before she left. She was doing the CompNutrition system there. So it's just diet office system, the patients and
more
putting their
IT
preferences
first,
in.
IT area.
Yeah, but you had to have clinical knowledge for the clinical parts of it because there was both, the clinical aspect and then the clinical aspect as far as like the diet office.
Okay.
And it may have changed a lot since I did it.
Initially did
it. But the Seaboard Group was a competitor of CompNutrition. They do the same thing.
Okay.
But it's just a different company.
That you can purchase
and then have. And then I actually was in sales there, and I would fly around to different, I had a very big territory. This was before children.
So you were back in Omaha, Nebraska area?
Actually Lincoln, because my husband went to dental school then.
Okay.
So we were in Lincoln, and I worked out of my home. And
oh, wow.
Yeah.
And that, like for most dietitians out of school, we have food service, clinical, and that's about it. There's not a lot of options. So you've had that's an interesting option too, because you were working from home.
Yeah.
And then flying all over the country. So when you're flying all over the country, what kind of, you would go to facilities and sell the product?
Right.
Okay.
Mostly to hospitals, some colleges. It was too big of a system for long-term care places because you really had to show that they were going to get, not make a profit, but they were going to streamline things so much with the system that it would pay for itself and more. So, but I didn't really care for sales, and I wasn't really all that good at it. So I switched over to training. So then I did training, and I would go
within the same company.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when somebody bought the system, somebody had to come out and do the training on the clinical parts of it, like the diet office system. So I did that.
I could see you being very good at that.
It was 3 years there.
Okay, so 3 years there.
3 years there, and then along came Jason, my oldest, and flying all over the country wasn't really working so well.
I bet. Well, yeah. Did you were doing the same role though? You were so when you would travel, how often were you traveling? Where were you?
I was traveling about every week.
Every week.
And then after my oldest was born, My husband was actually staying home with him the first 8 months because he had completed his prerequisites but was waiting for dental school to start.
Okay.
So it worked out well. But then once he started dental school, it was, I had a 2-week meeting in Ithaca, New York, because that's their headquarters. And it's just like, I can't do this, So that's when I decided I really wanted to get into clinical. I wanted to work in a hospital. And I actually got offered a job at Methodist to run the Seaboard program.
Oh.
And I almost took it, and I kept applying and applying at St. Joe's, which is now Creighton, and I didn't have that clinical experience. So, I was, I guess, resigned that I would just go back and work in that area and in the IT. And then all of a sudden, Creighton called and gave me a good offer, and I was totally green because my internship wasn't very clinical.
Ask, so when you did your internship, did you have all those aspects, like the food service, the clinical?
We did, but they don't do that
in that particular program that you were in.
Right. It was a research program more. So they had like the community in there, and they had the clinical, but it wasn't anything like you'd get in a hospital. Mm-hmm. It wasn't anything.
So you didn't go into a hospital during your clinical rotation in your internship?
No, I didn't. So I was really green, which is probably why it took them so long to hire me.
Let's give her a shot.
Yeah.
Because you were really how many years total? So maybe 6 years, 7 years? You did mostly IT?
Let's see. Well, I did the Cisco thing. Yeah, that was IT pretty much. So 3, 4, the pharmacy was in the middle. 4, 5, 6, 7, about 7.
So I can understand that.
Yeah.
But you still had that passion. You were still really, really drawn to that clinical hospital setting.
Yeah.
So even though you had this great offer to work at Methodist and do the Seaboard, you still were like, I want to be in that clinical role.
Did.
So you kept kind of pursuing that. And then you said St. Joe's
and
took a leap. And
they took a leap, and I stayed there for 21 years. So after all that,
and obviously it turned out to be a great fit for you. And I think, thinking about how you did move from lots of different jobs in the beginning, it's kind of like you were looking for that kind of piece that was going to sustain you.
And I had very good teachers there. The dietitians that were there when I first started and was so green, they were really good teachers.
Were they?
Yeah, and they're still good friends. So that was really.
And
we went through a number through the years. I mean, you were there, 10? Were you there 10?
7 years.
7?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so
kind of talk to me about when you started. So you said you were really green. Didn't really know a lot about clinical.
So they put me in cardiology.
Okay, so you started.
So I did a lot of teaching of the cardiac patients.
Low sodium diets.
Yes,
and
tons of that. Because, So, and we didn't have a really clinically focused director there at the time. She wasn't really knowledgeable, but the other dietitians were.
Okay.
And it was really interesting, and it was cool because they took us out of the food service department and put us in case management. So we were with the social workers, the case managers, utilization review. I think that was it. And our director was an RN, but she was awesome, and she really helped us pursue getting, more into the medical stuff because it was kind of more food service oriented before that.
Well, if you were under the kitchen, if you were in food service, people thought you were the ones making the toast and bringing coffee.
And had the little food hat on. And So she got us into all these policies. And again, this has been a while, so my memory is not the best. But we redid all the policies, and we used Aspen guidelines and had algorithms. You can erase that part if you want. Just stumbled over algorithms. And we would go to the medical, I'm drawing a blank, what is that called the medical staff
meetings,
committee
meetings,
where you pass your policies through.
Yep.
And we got a lot of policies, clinical policies passed through, like
specifically for dietitians.
For dietitians, like writing for albumins and pre-albumins, and we could write for an indirect calorimetry. They had to co-sign, but she really spearheaded, pushing us in that direction. And so that 5 years was great. And then they decided to contract out, which I think is when
I started working,
came on.
Yep, with Sodexo.
So then they decided to contract out with Sodexo, and so I think we were, in the time you were there, we were fighting to keep that clinical
aspect of the job.
Yes, because the patients had very high acuity. So you really, needed to have that clinical experience, and I went from being green to being thrown in the fire and doing ICU and all of that. And
so you really, like when you started out kind of in that food service role, and then you kind of bounced out of it and got us more into that professional, clinical nutrition, important part of the medical team role. And then you kind of felt like we went back to more of the food service role a little bit and kind of back into that.
Yeah, a little bit. But we fought pretty hard to stay with that. I don't know at what point you came, but we fought pretty hard.
To keep that importance of our clinical expertise.
And then I think whenever there was Katie, a different Katie, had her CNSD at the time. So she did, the ICU, and we had a nutrition support team. And then I think maybe Kim got hers next because Katie left and became a physician's assistant. And then somewhere in there I went and got mine.
Yeah, I want you to talk to me about how you kind of got interested in nutrition support and being that CNSD. And Katie, her name's Von Oldenburg, not the other one, was really good at what she did, and she got me really interested in it. But I realized that I had to really work in clinical and do the ICU because I looked at the study guide for the test and I thought, oh my gosh. It was intimidating.
This is not going to work right now. So I did end up taking it, and I've taken it now. Every 5 years you have to renew. So I've taken it 4 times.
Oh,
and I'll have to take it again in 2017 to renew, so it'll be 5 times.
Do you think you kind of found your niche and your passion with nutrition support and that specialization?
Yeah, I really loved working in the ICU.
That was kind of your most favorite.
I really did like doing that, and then I did the manager role also, which was kind of fun to
So you got to work with both hats at the same time. So you got to be a clinical nutrition manager of dietitians, and you had 4 or 5 of us that you were that you were in charge of, and then you also were the ICU, basically the head of ICU when it came to.
Yeah, and then we had that double maternity leave, and there was.
We did.
You and me. Half of you and one of me.
I remember those days. That was a very stressful time when we were trying to manage a whole hospital, and I was part-time. I wasn't even full-time, so
we were like a well-oiled machine.
We rocked it.
We rocked it. We did.
We did. We worked some crazy hours, but we still got everybody taken care of, I think.
We did.
Even those NICU babies.
Oh, my Lord. That's a
whole other animal. We'll definitely have an interview with Kim to have her tell us about her NICU experiences and her expertise. But I always really felt that was, very much, I was always inspired by your knowledge in nutrition support. And you taught me so much about how to even calculate TPNs and tube feedings. Because I think when you learn that stuff in school, how you apply it in the actual place is way different.
You really just have to do it.
You do. And it's good to find out the tips and tricks of dietitians who are actually practicing it than the ones that are teaching it. So it's always interesting I hear my interns that I have now, and I always ask them about their experience with calculating in school versus in the hospital, and we all have had those same experiences.
Yeah, the TPN is really intimidating when you first do it.
Absolutely. I remember I remember you gave me the first task of calculating my first TPN
I did.
in the hospital, and I was so nervous. It was like doing my first diabetic education. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous to do it. But yeah, I still have my note. Do you remember my notebook that I wrote everything down? I still have that because I still use that.
Yes, I definitely remember your little notebook.
I still have my badge too.
Do you?
Isn't that funny?
And we had those brown big,
those
bigger
that we kept all of our chart notes in.
Thingies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because everything was on paper.
Yes, crazy, but.
So then I went to bariatrics because Sodexo lost the contract and things kind of got crazy.
Okay.
And I ended up, I had worked a lot with Dr. Force on the nutrition committee. And
so you were also a member of the hospital. There was a nutrition committee at the hospital, and you were the member that represented the dietitians on that group.
Well, it was kind of our committee.
Okay.
It was our committee, and then we had like a pharmacist, a nurse, a few doctors on there, and we would go through them before we passed a new policy or changed anything.
So everybody was on board and were aware that it was happening.
And Dr. Force was a bariatric surgeon. Well, he was director of surgery and then bariatric surgeon and was on that committee.
Okay.
So when this all was happening, he called me up and said, we're trying to revive bariatrics because the previous surgeon had left and it kind of had died down, and so they were ready to revive it. So I decided, okay, I'll do that.
So you were part of like that management team. Sodexo was the management team, and then you actually left that part of being a dietitian for that team and went back to being under the hospital, under that surgery team.
It was actually under the Department of Surgery.
Yeah.
Okay. So I left the hospital side as a contracted person and went actually over to the Department of Surgery, and that was actually Creighton University.
Okay. So you were an employee of the university.
Right.
Wow. So you've even, thinking about being employed by different entities, just from, like a supply company to a pharmacy to a contract company, now to a university, that you would never guess that a dietitian would be employed by all those different types of entities.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things out there. I just kind of fell into them, it seems like, but yeah, a lot of
different employers of dietitians.
And bariatrics, well, you did some of that, so
a little bit.
It's very interesting as far as the psychological part of it. I think a lot of times you feel like you're a counselor rather than a dietitian. But the surgery part of it was really interesting, and learning, all the different procedures. And then I ran the support group once a month for them. And then they got a new surgeon that came on, and he was really, really good. And so we really kind of rebuilt things, and we're just kind of tooling along. And then...
So you really liked the surgery. Again, you're going back to like your clinical. You loved the surgery part of it.
Yeah.
And how, like, when it, ICU patients don't really talk a lot. We don't have a lot of interaction with ICU patients. So going from that to like interaction with bariatric patients and like support groups, how was that transition for you?
That was a really big transition. It was a really big transition. But I had a family member that had that surgery, so I'd always been interested and kind of had a special place
connection
in my heart because she lost 260 pounds.
Wow.
And it changed her life. So I was always interested from that aspect. But I think it didn't really have as much clinical as I would have liked or thought there would be. So
you still know your passion is definitely that clinical.
Well, and I wanted to use the CNS. Now it's the CNSC. I wanted to be able to use that, and I wasn't really able
to use
in that position.
Which is kind of surprising when it's like with the surgery and
yeah.
Did you have patients that would have bariatric surgery that needed nutrition support very often?
We did, but usually at the time I had Kim handle them.
Okay.
Because she worked for Quorum, and they're so knowledgeable about, doing it at home. And so I kind of had my hands in it a little bit.
Okay. So
when we would have those patients
that went home on some type of nutrition support.
Right.
So you didn't have a lot of involvement, but that outside company that would go in and help them at home.
Usually what would happen is they would come back in the clinic and be having complications like a stricture or just not tolerating things.
Not able to
and
keep
so,
food down.
Yeah, so they'd put them on TPN for a while, but they did it in the home. So, and one interesting thing now is it used to be that you would have to be admitted to the hospital to start TPN. And now the way healthcare is going and trying to keep people out of the hospital, we just start people at home from the clinic.
Really?
Oh, yeah, there's no more. And we monitor their labs every day because now I'm doing what Kim does. But, yeah, it's really been interesting, too, to see the transition from the hospital days and, you know, taking care of people at home instead of
in the
hospital.
That's a cool aspect, though, for you. So you did 4 years doing the bariatric, and so where does that bring us to present day currently?
Yeah,
okay.
It was about a year and a half ago, and I was really kind of scared to make the jump. That had been my home for so long. So I waited until they offered it to me 3 times.
3 times?
And then I decided to make the jump.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So now you are on that side of, so the hospital was the place that you always felt most comfortable in, and now you're in the homes helping people.
I actually don't go in the homes, really. I think I've only been into a home once. I can.
You can go.
And if needed, you know, I would. But mostly it's working with the physicians and getting the labs. And a lot of the physicians, most of them, just have me write the TPN.
Okay.
And then they'll sign it. They'll let me make the changes, determine.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's fun. It's stressful, but I like it. I definitely like it.
So tell me about your current job. What is a day like when that's great that physicians that you're working with are so confident in you and your, you know, expertise that you can write the TPN and they just sign off on it for you.
Yeah.
That's amazing, because if you think about probably where you started, it's scary. It's a lot of responsibility.
And once again, I came into this and I was green because I hadn't done this. So they sent me down to our corporate headquarters in Norfolk, Virginia, and I got a real quick course of a week. With and it's doing that, and it's also dealing with Medicare, the Medicaid, Medicare, and then like TRICARE, any of the government insurances, because I have to take the patient's history and put it through to try to qualify them. And a lot of times they don't qualify, and then I have to, you know, use my imagination and just, you know, there's certain criteria.
So you're working on the billing kind of certification part too.
Yeah. I mean, I have to qualify them.
Okay.
I don't per se do the billing, but I have to.
You have to find the reason why they're needing to do that.
Right. So for enteral, there's certain criteria, like they have to have dysphagia, and they'll want to see the actual swallow study. They won't just take a doctor saying they have dysphagia. So the clinical liaisons go out there and they collect the stuff that I need. And then we send it to our Medicare review team, and they look at it. And sometimes they'll disagree, you know.
Really?
And then I have to put my neck on the line because, and corporate helps me with that. You know, I can run it by them.
So you get great support from your...
Yeah, definitely.
Good. That's good.
Yeah, so they'll say, yeah, you know, this person should qualify, and then we'll have to sign off on it. So that's a little bit scary too, because you know, if they come back and audit, then
you have a really good malpractice insurance, I'm assuming.
Well,
just in case
through your
through your job.
So yeah.
So your title, you work for InfuScience, and your title is
Nutrition Support Dietitian, I think.
Nutrition Support Dietitian.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the card there.
Thank you.
So
that's really, I think that's amazing. Like you said, the transition of how, you know, the patients don't even have to come into the hospital to get this service, and you're providing it outside of a hospital setting, and you've seen that change over the last years, and how many people are actually on this type of nutrition support at home is amazing to me.
Yeah, and we have to monitor real closely for refeeding syndrome.
Okay.
Just like we did in the hospital, but we do it at home, and we get daily labs, for 3 days or so, and we start them really low and give them thiamine and just kind of watch things and then gradually increase them.
That's so neat. So you're really kind of applying all the things that you did at the hospital. And so how do you feel like now that you're at this role, this part in your life with all the things that you've done in the past? Is it kind of like, do you feel like you're still living out your passion as a registered dietitian?
I feel that I am.
Good.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a lot more stressful than any job I've ever had.
Is it?
And it's
just because of the responsibility and
the responsibility, and a lot of people rely on you, and there's only one of me here, so I'm basically on call 24/7 if something comes up. Yeah, the pharmacists rotate, but since I'm the only one, so if I go on vacation, I can, like if I would go on an extended vacation, I can have corporate dietitians do it, but they're not familiar with our patients, so I usually just try to do it myself. Because
even when you're on vacation, you're super dietitian.
I'm gonna have to take a real vacation, I think, because.
So when's the last time you taken a vacation?
Well, I went
a real one.
I went to see my mom in Chadron. She was sick, and so I covered when I was there. And then last year I went to New York, but I did cover while I was there.
Did you?
If they called me at a Yankees game, I couldn't hear, so I had to call them back later. But they, my phone has my email on it, and so they can just scan
email it to you
and email stuff, and then I can look at the labs and look at the prescription and say, they need 20 more of sodium chloride or whatever it happens to be.
See, I'm just amazed by how I feel like your role as a CNSD is so much like a doctor. You just, and pharmacist and all these different entities combined.
And I'm sure Kim's the same way too. And the pharmacists, are constantly coming to me asking me what to do. And it's just kind of like,
you're like, don't.
What are you?
You're kind of thinking, don't you know this?
And I guess I didn't expect to have that much, what's the word I'm looking for? That much responsibility or that, because there are some doctors that kind of, want to have their hands in it, but most of them don't really know how to do it.
Which I think is, honestly, it probably is good because you do get respected as the person that knows nutrition, where doctors don't have that same education.
And that's, in the hospital, you don't always feel that way.
No.
So it is different that I feel like we're really respected in this job.
That's great.
Just as far as it's a whole different, and our corporate is very instrumental in that.
So you have great support from your corporate office.
And there are branches that don't have a dietitian in the branch. They have to use corporate, and some of those branches don't have quite the respect. They think the pharmacists should be able to do it all. So it kind of varies from branch to branch.
Well, I think it probably has a difference of also who their dietitian is, or I'm sure that you probably get a lot more respect just because of your knowledge and your expertise than maybe some other dietitian that maybe doesn't have the same expertise.
Maybe I'm just bossy.
Or you're bossy. You could be that too. I've never said you a bossy.
From having kids and bossing everybody around.
Taking charge. That's all right. Yeah. But you keep yourself educated too, and that's a very important part because there's so much that changes, I'm sure, from every 5-year certification, or is it pretty similar? I don't really know a lot about the certification process.
I was just talking to Kim about this the other day. The first 3 times I took it, it was similar. And then they changed it from the CNSD, which was Clinical Nutrition Support Dietitian, and like the doctors that got certified took their own tests. The nurses that got certified had their own. Pharmacists had their own. We had our own. Well, then they combined it all. Oh. And that's why it's CNSC now. It's
CNSC,
clinician instead of dietitian.
So then everybody's under that same.
Right.
Okay.
So that was, when I took it 4 years ago, that was the first time it was that way. And I thought it was a lot harder.
Because, they're
it was a lot broader. They wanted you to know pharmacy, stuff about what the TPN looking like means and, stuff that I wasn't as familiar with. So, yeah. That.
Do you think you were just as nervous for your test every 5 years as you were as the initial RD exam?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say, though, I'm going to be very nervous in 2017 because now I have to have it for my job.
Okay. It's a requirement.
And I never had to have it.
You did it kind of as, I like to have it.
I'd like to have it, and it's very expensive.
Is it?
To take.
How much is it to take the test?
I think it's like $300 if I remember right, but then there's like study materials that you pretty much have to get.
Does your employer pay for that? No. Okay. So that comes out of your pocket.
And actually, the funny thing is when I was the bariatric dietitian with Creighton, they paid for it that year.
And you didn't really use it.
And I didn't really use it, yeah. They paid for it that year.
So some employers might pay for the test.
And I think, Sodexo paid once, I think, if I remember right. But not all of them do because they look at it as that's part of your education. So
that's part of your responsibility.
But it is a nice perk if
so it might be a good thing to ask if people are thinking about becoming one to see if their employer would cover it. Do you feel as a registered dietitian that those specialty certifications are beneficial for a dietitian to make more advancements in their career or more money in their career?
I don't know much about the others. I know the oncology one. Depending on what position you're in, what hospital you're in. Like if, for example, Nebraska Medicine, they're very supportive of them specializing and going forward, whether it's transplant, oncology, whatever. But I think it depends on where you are. So like the oncology one, I want to get.
Okay.
So you just log a certain number of hours.
Contact hours with oncology patients. Right.
And so I've worked, that's a lot of who I work with is the stomach cancer. Do you remember what Dr. Logie did? Yeah. So Dr. Foster does that, and we get a ton of his patients because he does TPN and he's got a very high volume. So a lot of the patients are gastric cancer, the peritoneal carcinomatosis, those kind of patients. So I've got, a lot of time that I spend on those. So hours-wise, I would be fine. But then I found out you have to be involved in 2 research projects that are oncology specific.
Oh, wow.
So I'm working on that part of it.
Which I'm sure you can probably find.
But I think when I get that, it'll make us just as a company more marketable to say,
we have this specialty dietitian that focuses on oncology.
Yeah, because a lot of our patients are oncology all the way around.
That's interesting.
So
I think that's interesting that you said that that's something that maybe that you want to do, because I think a lot of dietitians don't know that those specialties are out there, and that does make you, obviously there's a lot involved, and you're also already getting some of those contact hours, so think of all the dietitians that could be doing the same thing too.
Yeah, and I guess I kind of looked at it as, well, gosh, I'm doing all this anyway, I might as well get my certification.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, then I found out about the research projects. The diabetes one, I'm sure that one's very worthwhile, and
absolutely.
They a lot of times want to hire a CDE.
Yes, and that's again contact hours again too.
Right. So what are the other ones? There's a sports one.
Renal, sports. I think there's 5 of them, and then oncology. I can't remember.
And I'm sure the dialysis clinics
probably
like the renal.
I'm sure they do.
Certification.
And I think there'll probably be more that they'll add on to that too. I think that's just a great way to also not feel like you maybe have to go back to school, but you can kind of focus on that specialty area of what interests you or what you're working in, which is awesome. So how long have you been working with InfuScience then total?
It's been a year. It'll be 2 years in January.
2 years in January.
Yeah.
And you like it here? You're going to stick around for a while?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Omaha's market is pretty crazy now, with CHI having so many of the hospitals. And something that I ran into, like the Nebraska Medical Center having its own internship program, they do a lot of hiring from within. So getting into a good internship program, I think that
helps.
Yeah.
And secure more positions.
Right. Your chances of getting on a place like that where they do promote dietitians and respect them and all of that, because it's very hard to get in.
Well, I think about when I went through my internship, I was so grateful I had a job offer from you guys, because at the time there wasn't a lot of job opportunities available. So I do think internships, well, they already kind of have you trained. So it's kind of like, well, it's a perfect fit to kind of slide it.
And they're doing Iowa State again, I guess.
Are they?
After...
That was another aspect of your job. You were a preceptor, and you also had interns. And that was something that you guys did for quite a while.
Yeah, and it's funny now. I don't know if it's funny, but but they hired a guy dietitian at Creighton.
Which is new. A lot more males are in the field.
And then the position that Jen was going to take but didn't, I heard, and I don't know if this happened, but the other candidate they were looking at was the guy.
Wow.
Imagine having like 50% of your staff
being male.
Be male in
Would
our
it be
profession.
Completely unheard of 20 years ago?
Yeah.
Which I think is good. I think the variety for having different perspectives of male and female, and a predominantly female dietitian.
That just reminded me, because I remember having a male intern when we were there.
We did have an intern. He was very much into food service, I think, if I remember. Yeah, that was different for us to have. I had a male intern this past year too, so that was it was fun. It was my first one as an intern, so I think it's great that we're getting a little bit more variety in our field. And he ultimately wanted to focus on sports nutrition. I think that was kind of his goal. So again, we just have lots of opportunities, all different types of opportunities as dietitians. So it's good. Thanks to people like you have lots of different experiences that can pave the way. You
certainly have evolved a lot since your Creighton days.
I think it all just, like you said, you just kind of find things that you always brings you back to different things. And clinical has always been an interest of mine.
And you do that in your job too,
with
the teaching. And
I still have the teaching aspect and some MNT.
And I think the longer you work and the longer you're out there, the more contacts you get, and then you kind of fall into
different opportunities. And that's what's great about being a dietitian, I think, is you do meet so many different dietitians and resources, and we're kind of like a little network that we think of, Sherry would be a great person for this job, or she'd be a great person to do a talk at a university or something like that, for future options of dietitians that we know to do different things.
Yeah. It's kind of fun.
It is fun. That's why it's fun to do things like this with you, because then I get to come back and relive some of your dietitian days that we spent together.
I know. And it's like that picture from M's Pub, I just always think, those were the days.
Those were the days. We go out to lunch.
Yeah, we had fun.
Those were fun. Well, I appreciate the serious questions. So I have some fun questions for us to end our podcast with. What is your favorite food?
My favorite food?
Wine?
No, I'm just kidding. That was a joke.
Is that a food?
That was a joke. Oh, gosh. Probably cheese.
Cheese. You like
cheese?
Which
isn't a great thing.
Cheese is fantastic.
Yeah.
I love cheese.
I love cheese, too. It just has a lot of fat.
What's your least favorite food?
Cantaloupe.
Cantaloupe.
I don't know why. I just
Has it always been your least favorite?
I just don't like it. And I like every other melon, but I just don't like cantaloupe.
It. Interesting. What's your favorite drink? You can say wine now if you want to.
Wine.
Perfect. What's your least favorite drink?
Sweetened iced tea.
Sweetened iced tea. Well, you're never going to live in the South then, right?
No. I can do regular iced tea.
Just
with lemon in it, but I don't like sweet in my coffee and my tea. That's not your thing. Don't.
That's all right. What's your favorite smell? And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be food.
My favorite smell would be candles at Christmas.
At Christmas time.
Like cinnamon
like those
candles.
Christmas flavors. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's your least favorite smell?
My least favorite smell? Cantaloupe.
Cantaloupe. We'll just go with that. I like that. And then the last question is, what is your guilty pleasure when it comes to food?
My guilty pleasure would probably be guacamole.
Guacamole. Is that
and probably some cheese dip too. Or spinach dip.
You got some heart-healthy fats and some cheese fats. So perfect. Well, I just love answering those or asking those fun questions. So thank you for doing that. And thanks for spending time with me today. And it's always great to reconnect with people that have a very close place to my heart. So thanks so much.
Yeah, we have to schedule something else so we can
keep our conversation going. Absolutely. That was such a wonderful conversation with Sherry. It takes me back to my clinical nutrition days and working with her and the other dietitians in our little teeny tiny office. We had the best conversations in that tiny office, and I also learned so much of my clinical nutrition knowledge during that time. I'm really lucky to have her in my life, and she's such a great mentor and friend. Please go to AnnElizabethRD.com, where my book, I'm a Registered Dietitian, Now What?, is available, and you can also find all of our show notes and links to things we talked about during our conversation. You can also connect with me on Twitter and Instagram at AnnElizabethRD. And as I leave you today and every time we're together, I remind you to be great always, find the joy in each day, and start a conversation that truly matters.